I believe um, that we are actually watering down our stories as Africans. So first and foremost is that we must change our perspectives and see ourselves as we should. And that is, we are not just a people who come from a third world continent, but we are people who come from a continent where life actually began. And so that changes even how you express yourself. That changes how you see the world. That changes how you even value the stories that are around your community, you know. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine and I was telling them what makes me so excited about being in Africa, yet they called it a third world continent, is the fact that there are so many opportunities to grow. There's so many opportunities to become. And it's like, why would you want to think of that as, you know, something to look down upon? You know, for us as Africans, the possibilities are endless. You know, when you look at infrastructure, just because we are not there yet does not mean where we are, there are no possibilities. And the same is with storytelling. There are people who've done stories for, you know, centuries, but we as Africans, I believe we have to see ourselves the right way so that we can tell our stories authentically. You know, for the longest time, we've seen instances where we have producers come from, you know, from the West to come and tell African stories. And that never really quite sat well with me. And that led me to join a certain program by Skoll Foundation that empowered African filmmakers, especially in the East African region, to tell stories, you know, tell stories from their country in their own perspective. And what ended up happening is that these stories were so beautiful. Some of them went ahead to win awards. Some of them are being used as tools of impact, and all of them are still the normal NGO stories. But the thing that they were so that was so pivotal even with that program is that they brought us to a place where they equipped us enough to go tell our stories without trying to fit us into a box. And even just going back to the organization that I work at, which is the East African Documentary Film Fund, like that particular organization exists to fund filmmakers, you know, and me being a filmmaker, I have found a home there. And so even as we continue, I just want to let you know, if you are a filmmaker and you want to tell stories in a way that is not just commissioned or using, you know, certain perspectives, I believe they are the right people to look for. You can also look for me. I'll share as much information as I can. Yes, let's continue. Let's go to the next one. So the goal of this presentation is three. Number one is to empower. Number two, to equip, and to encourage. So the goal is to help participants understand how to find, frame real human-centered African stories that go beyond stereotypes. Everyone is dying in Africa with malaria, and we are living outside. The goal of this particular presentation is to empower us as filmmakers to go beyond the stereotypes so that we are able to tell our truth based on our culture and our lived experiences. Number two is to provide a step-by-step guidance on how to identify, shoot, bring to life these amazing stories that are found in this continent of ours. Number three is just to encourage us to go ahead and shoot. Don't worry about how it's going to come out start. You know, one of the things that I like about a certain producer from the West is called Quentin Tarantino. He said, just start. So even us in Africa, we should not wait until we have Hollywood standard, you know, Hollywood grade, Hollywood edit kind of films. You just start, and you'll find that we'll be advancing even in terms of our storytelling skills. So those are the three goals of this particular presentation. We can move on to the next one. So part number one, how do you identify authentic stories? Let's move on. So authenticity starts from observation. You see, the reason we have so many stereotypes is because so many people think they know, and they will come and tell our African stories based on what they have preconceived already. But you see, authenticity starts from observation. It starts from being in a space where you sit, you listen, you listen to, for example, you're telling a story about a certain young man in Nigeria. I cannot go to Nigeria with a Kenyan perspective and hope that I'll tell the right and authentic story. So what I'll do is that I will listen to the stories about Nigeria. I'll listen to the stories about this young man's life. Why? Because it's in the listening that I'm able to hear what he's saying, to hear what his environment is saying. Secondly, is that we have to watch. Watch means you have to look with an intention. So using the same case study of an individual in Nigeria, for example, I have to be able to take in as much of the environment as possible, which means looking at how do the people dress, how do they speak, this story that I'm about to tell, what is it saying? Number three is that you need to understand that as a filmmaker or as a storyteller, all you are is that you are a tool to be used to tell this story. This story is not yours, and so how you tell these stories authentically is through observation and understanding that you are there to understand what these people are going through. Don't go there with your preconceived notion. Don't try to tell a narrative that is not true. Make sure you understand whatever story that you want to tell and that it has an impact, one, in terms of the people you're talking to, two, in terms of the people who the story is about, and it will even have an impact on you as the storyteller. And then finally, number four is that we need to be truthful in how we express these stories. What that means is that we go in without any biasness. Remember, don't force it. Tell it as it is. So if this particular young man that you're talking about as a case study, say, for example, lives in a posh place, do not try and dim down the story. How you tell authentic stories is that you do not force the narratives. What makes a story authentically African? Number one, it's rooted in real experiences, not stereotypes. What that means is that once you listen, you watch, you understand, you'll start understanding that the best stories actually come from real experiences, not ones that try to fit a certain narrative. Number two, they are driven by character, not charity or poverty. One of the things that we have seen, especially with producers who come to produce films, and they're from the West or from other parts of the world, and yet they've not stayed long enough with their characters to tell this story, is that they usually push a lot of this narrative of the only thing that Africa needs is charity. Well, the truth of the matter is that charity is not the only thing we need. We are not all poor, you understand? And so we have characters. We have people who might be living or coming from humble backgrounds, but they are doing amazing things. They are innovative individuals. And so some of the best stories that are African are very character driven. So you'll find someone went through a certain hardship, emerged victorious. And what that particular story does is that it represents more than just this particular person. And how else you make a story authentically African is that you balance between probability, where yes, we know we are innovative, but also we get to see the vulnerability of these particular people. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Sawa. Thank you.
Yes.
So this is what I'm talking about. This too is Africa, and these are just screen grabs from some of my past projects. You'll see people in boardrooms, people in markets, people in marginalized communities. You'll see farmers. You'll see accountants. You'll see all these things. And for me, being a storyteller allows me to enter a space where I'm able to tell all these stories without making them feel like all they need is charity. Number one, when you look at the first image, this was a story about a group of ladies who are in the western part of Kenya, and they were living in the streets, and they had gone through a rehabilitation program, and they started an organization where they were recycling plastic and making a living out of it. And so you, as a storyteller, you should be able to go in and not just show, oh, these people are from the slums, oh, these people are suffering, but you should be able to tell these stories authentically and say there is hope. There is hope in Africa. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all poverty and all of us are sleeping outside. We have innovations. Image number 6 was a documentary I was doing during COVID. And this particular market was one of the first markets to reopen in Machakos County. And so you see, like, these are people who are so resilient that even in the face of a global pandemic, they still had a ray of hope. And so all this is to show you that storytelling in Africa is not just about everyone is dying, or we need money, or we need help. We should rise to the occasion. We should rise above all of that and understand that we are the custodian of these stories that are in our continent. We are custodians of amazing, innovative stories. And with that, storytelling, authentic storytelling, is as important as storytelling itself, because this upcoming generation need to understand, I might be born in Africa, but that does not mean I'm doomed. I have a future. I'm seeing people who are taking what life has given them and they're turning them into gold. Image number 5 is actually the film that has won a few awards. And this was a place where, as much as you can see the green in the background, this particular community had been hit with drought for 3.5 years. Yet these people did not move. These people did not give up. And so for me, being a storyteller means that we tell these stories of hope. We tell these stories of hope. We tell these stories of a future. We tell these stories that, yes, we are in Africa, but that can only mean we are going up. And so this too is Africa. All these frames represent people in Africa, individuals in Africa. And as much as this is Kenya, I've done projects where I've edited stuff from like Nigeria, from Congo. But this was just to show you that all of us are not just telling stories. All our stories should not just be about doom and gloom. It should be about hope. It should be about a future that we want to see. It should be authentically us. That even though someone started an organization in a very remote part of Africa, there's still hope. And yeah, so this too is Africa. So we can move on to the next one. So never forget that you have to remain unbiased. As storytellers, we should remain unbiased, not choosing sides, but embracing our noble duty to present the reality in its truest form. What this means is that even as you go in to tell these stories, you have to understand that you're not there to tell your audience what to do. You're there to present the reality so that they can make the decision and the choice for themselves. All right. So at any given moment when you're telling a story, remember to remain unbiased. Why? Because when you remain unbiased, then you allow people to walk into these new realities, or rather existing the realities that they did not maybe see themselves in. We are custodians of the stories in this continent. And so let us not try to tell these stories as, people who have been hurt, but let us tell these stories truthfully without being biased to either of the sides. Can go to the next one. So how do you identify an authentic African story? Let's move to the next one. think mine is still stuck. Yes. Number one, start with lived experience. And authentic African stories are born from real lives, people from communities who live the reality being told. So as a storyteller, you're supposed to look for people who are living out that reality. If you're talking about climate resilience, it is best to look for someone or a community that is actually part and parcel of being climate resilient, and there's some mitigation measures that are happening. You look for stories that are rooted in everyday experiences rather than external perceptions and imposed narratives, maybe by foreigners or people from different communities. So before telling someone else's story, examine your biases. This means looking deep within, asking yourself, what does this story make me feel like? And so that you do not impose those feelings on your story. Because if you do, remember that there are people who are for the story and there are people who might be against the story. There are people who will say that you did not do them justice by being biased to one side. And so as storytellers, we must understand that being unbiased is not just a suggestion, is a code of conduct. All right. So authentic storytelling demands humility, to unlearn what you've been told about Africa. Africa is dying, all these things, and talk about what truly is. It's a continent that is full of hope, full of ambition, innovation, young people who really want to change the world. And so you start with lived experience. Next. Listen before you film. So in my 13-year journey, I have I have I have come to realize some of the best stories I've told actually came from a place where I had to go spend time in that particular community with these people. So like, for example, the frames that you're seeing like on the side of your screen, I had to go and spend time in this particular community in Narok, so that before I bring the cameras, before I come and try and tell their story, I wanted to just hear them, hear the backstory. Like this particular gentleman who's standing, he comes from a very humble background, and he had received a scholarship to go and study to become a teacher. And then he got a job. He went from his community, but along the way, he realized, as much as, yes, his career is advancing, children back in his community lack education. And so he left a well-paying job to come back to his community and teach this community and be part of, a school that was in this community, even though the pay was almost a quarter of what he was earning. And so you see, I had to sit down and listen to his story. Now, this is not part of the film, but it fed into the film, which makes your stories, it makes your film even more authentic. So when you slow down enough to listen and observe, you begin to notice subtle layers of truth. There are layers to every story. You start realizing the different tone, the different perspective. These are some of the details that will carry your story, not just what you think the story is about. So you listen before you film. Next. Check for ownership. I think this is quite important. You ask, who benefits from this story being told? Who is telling it? Like, you'll find that we have had instances where producers will come and try and tell a story of a certain community or a certain individual, yet they did not fully grasp whose story that was. A story that is authentic, when it gives a voice to the people it should give a voice to the people at the center. So for example, I did not go to this community to tell a story that I had written on a script. First, I went to that community and I had to sit with them. I had to tell them what I had observed, and I had to tell them that there's a way I'd like to tell the story, and they owned the story, which means they were able to open up and allow me to see more than I could have if I just planned to, do a 2-day shoot. So authenticity means letting people speak through your story. You just don't speak for them. So for me, I had to show them the film even when it was being edited. It's like we were co-creating together. And what this did is that it gave them a sense of ownership. And so even as we are learning to become storytellers, it's quite imperative for us to realize our job is not just to speak on behalf, but rather our job is to become an apparatus that those people or those communities can use, as a bridge to communicate their stories. We can move on to the next one. You have to look beyond the obvious. Do not chase what looks dramatic. Chase what's true. What you see, when I was doing my film, all I knew is that I had one character who had a very interesting story, and the story was that he needed to find a way to continue funding the organization, or the community that the organization is based in would suffer. But I did not go and try and create, the chaos and the drama and everything. And for the first couple of days, nothing really dramatic happened until I took a step back and I started realizing that there were all these story arcs. There are moments where we got lost in the wild. At one particular point, like for example, the frame that is on I believe the right side of your screen. This was a road that he had used for, I think, 7 years, but because of the harsh rain, it had turned his head around. And so a road that he knew and he had been driving for 7 years, he got lost. And for me, I was fortunate enough to be there to capture that. And so you have to be in a space where you look beyond the obvious. You do not try to create these dramatic scenes so that the audience that is watching feels like, oh, this is interesting, but rather you are a fly on a wall. You are part of their lives, and if anything happens that is dramatic, it is good. Sometimes the dramatic is so mundane that we miss it. You might think someone will come and we are going to be chased by a rival community with spears and everything, but then maybe the dramatic arc is getting lost. Maybe the dramatic arc is running out of fuel. And all these things are so subtle. Sometimes they're so quiet that we miss them. So when you are looking to tell an authentic story, you have to be patient enough to look beyond the obvious. All right. We can move on to the next one. Number 5, context is everything. Understand that cultural, social, historical contexts are very, very important. Authentic stories connect with the land, language, the rhythm of a place, that makes sense to the people who live there. You'll find that, for example, that film that I was filming, as much as I was there to tell this amazing story about an organization that has been in existence and it's on the verge of being closed down because of funding, there are all these contexts that I had to stop and take in. And in that communities, there's a way they see life. There's a way they do things. So whenever you are telling a story, you have to be careful not to impose yourself on their culture. So you have to understand their cultural context. Why is it that they do things the way they do? You know, you need to understand the social context of them as a people, and even historical context. Like, for example, I have another film that is coming out in a few weeks' time. It's a fiction film. It's not a documentary as the previous one, and this particular one is a period piece. You know, we wanted to tell a story of a couple, you know, a Maasai couple in Kenya in the year 1910. And so one of the things that we did is that we had to sit with a Maasai ethnographer for him to explain to us the culture or the cultural context of Maasai, the Ma people, you know, and what history has done to their culture, so that even when we go back, we do not taint their culture and their history because we think there's a story we want to tell. And so authentic stories connect the audience with the character who they're seeing in an authentic way, in a way that is not tainted. You know, it connects us to the land, the language, the rhythm of the place. How do they used to live life? You know, how was their days like? And so whether it's a period piece or you're telling a story in, you know, somewhere in a remote part of Tanzania, it's very, very important to understand the context of where you are. And even here in Nairobi, you'll realize that how life is in this capital city of Kenya called Nairobi, and how life is in the coastal city of Mombasa is very, very different. And so you cannot just impose yourself on the story. So being an authentic storyteller means you have to understand context. Context is everything. We can move on to the next one. Good. Number 6 is question your own lens. Before telling someone else's story, examine your own biases. I think I mentioned this earlier. You know, authentic storytelling demands humility, you know, to unlearn what you've been told about Africa, you know, what you've been told about you as an African, what you've been told, what you've not been told as well, what you've been told you could not achieve. And so it's a lot of unlearning and relearning what truly is. It means approaching every story with a curiosity rather than an assumption. And so if you find yourself in a space as a Kenyan, if I find myself in Ghana telling a story, I do not go there with an assumption that I know their story better than them. And so what then I go there with is curiosity. You know, I go there wanting to know more about the story that I want to tell, the people that are around that particular region, you know, rather than an assumption that I know. This allows you to portray the true picture of a people, a place, a project, and even moments of things happening in this beloved continent of ours. So question your own lenses. As question your own lens, question your own perspective, you know, question your own beliefs, so that when you go in to tell a story, it's not because of how you think such type of stories should be told. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Good. Now a very interesting one, storytelling through film. Let's move on to the next one. Good. Now, film, there are 3 stages of film production. There are 3 stages. The first one is pre-production. And I'm not going to stay so much on this because I believe most of us have an understanding. I'll just brush through. There are 3 stages of film production. The first one is pre-production. This is the planning phase where the story is developed, the research is done, you know, locations are scouted, logistics are organized. It's about preparing for clarity and success before even you get your camera out. Pre-production looks like, and as if it is a commissioned job by a client, it looks like understanding what is it that the client wants to tell, you know, what message is it? If it's a project, you know, by an organization that's coming to an end, what is the project about? So pre-production is heavily reliant on research, heavily reliant on research and planning. There has to be a lot of planning, because what you do not want to do is you do not want to be blindsided. And so whether you are the storyteller, this looks like you preparing the story, the script, the research, knowing where you're going, the logistics and everything. If you are the client who's commissioning the project, pre-production looks like understanding what your project is about and what you are looking to accomplish at the end. It looks at getting the right people to do your project. It looks like understanding the different stages of the process of storytelling, from when the filming will commence until the time they will deliver. Pre-production for the client looks like understanding the relationship between you and the storyteller. And also part of pre-production is preparing the characters that you're going to be spending time with. And so this looks like doing site visits, site records. It looks like going to hear them out, sitting with them long enough for them to tell you the true story or the true impact of those said projects or programs. And so that's what pre-production is. Now, production, this is the filming stage. This is the most exciting part for most people, where the story is captured through visual, sound, you capture emotions, you capture drama if there is any, it's about being observant, adaptable and ready to follow real moments as they unfold. 2023, like I mentioned, I was in that program by Skoll Foundation. And one of the skills that I learned was a shooting style called verite. Verite is simply observational. What that means is that I do not come to a space with a set mindset that this is what the kind of questions I want to ask. I want them to take me to, take me to your farm. Let me see how dry it is, or take me to here. I want you to try and do this. I do not try to do that. Rather, verite is very observational, where you follow these said characters maybe a few days, and you are able to derive your stories from their everyday life. And so production, this is where you bring in your cameras, your lights, your microphones and everything, and you film, you record the footage. And then there is the third stage, which is post-production. This particular stage is where you take the footage that you've already shot, the sound that has already been captured, and you start working on it. You cut, you refine, you shape the story. It is where raw materials become a powerful, authentic film. So this particular stage is where now you're able to say, we filmed maybe for, like my film, I remember I shot it from beginning till end, I think it was about 7 months. And post-production took me about 2 months. And so as much as I shot the whole entire project was 7 months, the film is less than 20 minutes. And so post-production is the stage where you are able to take in all this footage and turn it into something that can be consumed in a shorter time, but is able to convey the message that is intended. Let's move on to the next one. Now, other than just the 3 stages of filmmaking, there's conventions of storytelling. Conventions are agreed upon tools and techniques that guide how stories are told and understood. They help shape meaning, they help shape emotions, they help the audience connect with the story that you're telling them. And together, these particular conventions form the grammar. It forms the language that your film uses to communicate to its audience. There are 3 types of conventions. The first one is film convention. So you'll find like there are symbolic codes like body language. If you're telling a story about a winner, someone who won a lottery in Africa, their body language is you'll find that a lot of their body language is relaxed, they are composed. Color and lighting, color, how is it that you color your footage? Is it saturated? Is it desaturated? What types of lighting are you using? Is it ambient lighting alone? Is it natural lighting? Techniques like the camera shots, the camera angles. Is it a Dutch? Is it a POV? Is it an OTS? The camera movements, is it the framing? And so film conventions are the technique you use when you're filming. Then there's narrative conventions. This is looking at techniques like character. who is this particular character? What is their life looking like? What is it that they do that is unique to the world? You look at setting and environment. You look at things like conflict. Where does conflict arise? Is it a conflict to provide food for their families? Is it conflict because of where they live? Is it a conflict with family? And so these are all narrative conventional, or rather narrative techniques that help you convey the message. And then in documentary, we have different types of conventions like voiceover. We have, you'll see a film with a voiceover guiding the audience as to what is happening. The use of archival footage, the use of actual footage, reconstructed footage, where maybe the kind of story you're telling is about someone who existed before, there was a camera in their environment. How do you reconstruct all this through enactments? There's the use of things like interviews. How do you conduct these interviews? How do you set up your questions so that the interviewees are able to answer authentically, but also be able to tell the general story of the film? For Collizer, what is the selection of detail? Like, what is it that you want to be so detailed about? Is it money? Is it all these different themes? And so conventions in storytelling is very important because they allow you, they equip you with the right techniques and help you guide the audience to the story that you want to tell, and help even them understand the message. Let's move on to the next one. There are different types. There are different types of footage. One, this is footage that is short. Footage taken specifically, maybe in a documentary, to create realism. I was on the ground. This is what I shot. Then there's archival footage. This is footage that was previously filmed, of previously captured by another photographer, another filmmaker, or from other different sources that still tie into what story we are telling. There is reconstructed footage. This is more or less scripted, and reconstructed footage helps you recreate the moments that might have passed in previous seasons.
Yes, come in.
Yeah. Come in. Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Say hi to whoever's come in. Tell them to join the webinar.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so those are the types of footage. We can move on to the next one. Now, in storytelling, there are three, or maybe there are more golden rules, but there are three that I'd like to share. The first one, let's move. The first one is capturing emotions and truth on camera is key. So most of the times you'll find that there's a bit of an overlap with this, but nonetheless, you'll find that most people, they will do interviews or they'll ask questions during maybe documentary filmmaking, and then afterwards they'll just switch off the camera and let it sit. But one of the things that I've learned throughout my 13-year career is that some of the best moments are actually captured when you decide to put the camera down. The use of movement, capturing the ambience. Maybe you are in a kitchen in a remote part of Kenya and they're using firewood, and you've asked this person, oh, where do you get your firewood? Have you had complications? And all these questions. You'll find that the most authentic part of your stories will be those ones that where you capture their emotions. Maybe they're rubbing their eyes because of the smoke. The truth of the matter. That's what is important. Observing before you shoot. I think we talked about this. Timing is so important. And one of the rule of thumb when it comes to especially documentary filmmaking is that you don't worry about the footage. You capture as much as possible, because you cannot preempt what your subject or your character is going to do next. So timing is everything. So time yourself properly and capture as much as possible, because in that mundane activity is where you'll find your story. Respect boundaries and the right to tell someone's story. What this means is that like I mentioned, you go and stay with your characters, your subjects, and they will give you the opportunity to enter their lives. And so that is what you do. Number two is that you shape. The second golden rule is shape authenticity without losing truth in the edit. Editing is storytelling, not just cutting. Most people think that storytelling is just found in the shooting. No, editing actually is considered the third writing, the third writing. Like, so the first writing is where you write it on a document. The second writing is where you write it on the camera. The third writing is where you write it on when you're editing. And so the three pillars to a strong edit include: number one, structure. Who changes and how? So we have to see the evolution of your characters. We have to see the evolution of the environment. We have to see the evolution of that organization that you're filming. We have to see the evolution of the community. And so structure is very important. Emotion. What is the audience, what the audience feels at different points of the film. Like, for example, if maybe you're talking about a story on GBV, you also do not want it to just be doom and gloom and everyone is, what you want is that you want to be authentic. You want to show that as much as this particular horrible thing happened, there was a period in time that this person was happy. So you'll find, I, as a producer, what I would do is that maybe I'd ask my subject to go through maybe a photo album where I see them as kids. What that does is that it elicits a certain emotion and the audience is able to feel the highs, so that when the film pace changes and we go to a low, the audience emotion changes. So emotion is very, very important. Number three, integrity. Stay true to what really happened. Do not try and tell a different story. Do not try and tell a different story. Stay true to what really happened. Editing the African story is about balance. It's letting moments breathe through silence and detail, and avoiding the NGO edit syndrome, where we are dying, we need money, give us money, our project is ending, we want funding. Even when you're telling NGO stories, I've come to realize even how I have now come to tell my stories that are NGO commissioned, is by allowing the story to breathe, by allowing, the audience to sit in the moment. It allows them to connect with your character. And that means the story is able to have a larger impact than a story that feels like from beginning to end is just one big call to action. People need to feel that they're connecting with your subject, they're connecting with their environment, and they actually want to support and stand for that cause. Next, golden rule number 3, craft stories that resonate with African and global audience. Telling African stories begin with perspective, speaking with communities, not about them. What that means is that you and the community speak. You do not self-appoint yourself as the one who should tell the story. It's not about just about you. It's about using an empowering tone. That's why I love stories of hope. I do not like poverty porn where people just show Africa as a continent that is poor and it is dying. I like stories of hope. I like stories of a future, of resilience, and these are just some of the words that we mentioned earlier that describe what a true African me is. It's about using an empowering tone, capturing real human emotion. If someone cried, then they cried. Do not try and hide it. And honoring cultural rhythm. This particular culture that I'm filming in, there's a rhythm as to how they do things, unless now maybe you are telling a story that is a matter of life and death, then that's another thing. And even then you have to remember to remain unbiased and let your audience choose who they want to support in the story. And some of the things to keep in mind is the voice, telling stories from within, not about. So within the community, someone from the community, you usually identify someone from a certain community, and they are the ones to carry the story, not someone you have brought from outside. The tone, it has to be empowering, not pitying. Personally, I don't like pity. Emotion, finding and sharing, the joys, even in struggles, even the resilience, understanding that culture is a very sensitive thing. Every community has its own rhythm, has its own history, has its own way of life. Respect it. And you have to have a distribution mindset, how to shape stories for platforms. For example, are you doing a film that is just for festivals, that is going to go around and just amass so many awards? Or are you doing versions for social media? Are you doing versions for an organization for their reporting? Or are you doing versions where these films are going to go back to the community, so that it can be used as a tool to empower those said communities? So also having the distribution mindsets helps you craft stories that can resonate not just with audiences in Africa, but even people outside Africa, right? Can move on to the next one. Next one. Good.
Okay.
I'm seeing. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I've really, really tried to rush through, and I am also very curious to hear what you guys have to say, but these are just some of the key takeaways. Number one, identify, look beyond the headlines, listen deeply. Don't go in with your preconceived notions or assumptions. Number two, shoot, capture the truth, not performance, not what people are, faking. One of the things that I've realized, even as a documentary filmmaker, is that because of the age and time that you're living in, people have become so accustomed to certain stereotypes that if you go to certain communities, you might find people will tell you, okay, what do you want us to say? How do you want us to? No, shoot and capture the truth, not performance. So even if you go to a certain community and they're asking you, so what do you want us to do? Tell them, you just continue with your daily lives. I will find my place. Edit to shape emotions without distorting reality. If it was sad, if it was chaotic. I remember I did a political documentary for the first female governor of a county in Kenya called Embu. And my team and I were on the ground. We were capturing footage of her during the election. And it became so chaotic. Cameras, like even the camera person was running around. The beauty about that is that he forgot to press stop. So there's a lot of shaky footage, and we are seeing, chairs fly and people angry, and people throwing things around. And for me, being a producer and an editor, what I did was that I did not omit it. I included that chaos. Why? Because the chaos is part of the story. Because this particular first female governor, because of her gender, uh, her opposition wanted to steal the votes, but she stood her ground, regardless of the amount of chaos that was happening around her. And for me, it was imperative that I include the chaos in the film, so that even when we see her emerge victorious, we know that it was not a position that was handed to her on a silver platter, but she had to fight for it. And so the third stage of production is post-production. So you edit, you shape the emotion without distorting the truth. Number four, a key takeaway is tell. Share with pride, with depth, and with respect. All these people that you're filming, or in this community that you went to film in, this organization that has been doing an amazing project, you have to showcase your story, or the story of those. There's historical, and even social context, and so all of that is just a rundown of what I believe will help us become authentic storytellers. Authenticity isn't found in perfect shots. You know, most people have become, you know, it's about shooting 6K, you know, and then I'll edit with this. No, there are people who shoot even with their phone and they win international awards. There are people who shoot with, you know, entry-level cameras, and those films have gone to have impact in those communities. So it's not about the perfect shots, you know. Authenticity is found in honest storytelling, in honest shots, in honest coverage, in honest stories. So our job is to make sure Africa's stories are told by those who live them. It's not about an outsider. And so even if you're planning to go into a certain community, make sure you sit with people from that community. Let them tell you what they think about your story. Let them tell you. You'll find, I have a film that I was one of the editors. When did we did a world premiere, I think about 4-5 months ago. And this film took us 7 years to produce. Took us 7 years to produce, but it did not start out that way, you know. So that you have to be that flexible, you know. I remember there's a project I was involved in where the producer wanted to tell a story about the rising water levels in Lamu, you know, and they wrote the script and they went there to shoot that. But when they were there, they realized there was another story that emerged that was way more powerful about people ganging up on the elderly, calling them witches so that they could steal their land. And so the story went as far as the community even killing the elderly so that they can take their land. And so you see, these particular stories have to be told. Like that one in particular was told by a grandson of a lady who had been chased out of a community, even by her own children. And so some of the best stories and most impactful stories are told by people in those communities. Yeah. And so for me, as authentic storytellers, we should be able to. Hi, I can hear you. Anyways, those are the takeaways. And I hope that you'll be able to tell these stories authentically. Yeah. Next slide. Yes. And so if you have any questions, I'd like to hear them. If you have any suggestions, any comments, yeah, I'll be glad to answer a few of them.
Good job, Abel. I love the last slide. Let me just go back a little bit. Authenticity isn't found in the perfect short; it's found in the honest one, and that is my key takeaway for tonight. You just do an honest short and tell the story as it is. Allow me to read the comments in the comment section. So someone has said, beautiful explained. Is the okay? Let me see. Great session. I really love the parts of the authentic stories. Very good session. I'm really getting new things here. And then there's someone who says, sometimes back in 2021, I branded my LinkedIn profile as a Pan-Africanist. Right now, what comes to my table is
Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Let me see if I can log in so that we can do the Q&A.
Oh, okay, sawa. You cannot hear me? All right. Can you hear me, guys? Am I audible? Am I audible? Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. I don't know if Abel is still here. And we can all agree that Abel has done justice to this topic. I mean, he's nobody could have done justice to this topic the way Abel has done justice to it. I mean, he's done a wonderful job. Abel, let me know if you can hear me. and I'll continue. If not, we'll see. Let's see. Abel, can you hear me? Let me see. I am not sure if you guys can hear me. Let me see. Comment section.
You find the story when you're editing, because you cannot, when you start directing your subjects on what to do, they might not fully bring it out and it might not be authentic. So how then do you decide on what not to focus on? So this, I'll give you my secret sauce of what I usually do when I'm doing documentaries. So for example, I go to a community and I know that my story in that community is about FGM, for example, a very sensitive topic. Let me actually use an example that of something that happened. So in 2023, I was working with some young filmmakers, you know, and one of the things that I like doing, I'm very practical. So I told them, tell us about a story that you'd want to shoot, a documentary that you would want to shoot in your community. Let us go there and let us film. And that was okay. This young girl from the northern part of Kenya called Garissa wrote a very interesting story. You know, it was the story of a young girl who, you know, was just about to undergo FGM, but she did not want to tell her friends. And I remember we went there. I thought it was a reenactment because she just got, you know, her sisters, her cousins to film, only for her to tell me later on during the day that the person who she chose as the main character to act out FGM practices in Garissa was actually about to undergo FGM in 2 weeks' time. And so one of the things that you do as a storyteller is not try to create drama so that you have eyeballs. Some of the most amazing stories, or rather those dramatic acts, are just found in the mundane. Just the only thing is that you'll have to shoot a lot. So ensure that you invest in a lot of hard disk space. What was the other question? So you do not create drama, you observe. Whatever comes, you capture, and then you find your story arcs. So when it comes to editing, there's the middle, there's the beginning, the middle, and the end. And all of them are represented by a curve. So a curve means there's an up, there's a down. And so you'll find that even in something as simple as a story about someone who just woke up and found that they were late for work, you don't have to dramatize that, you know, it was raining and thunderstorm was outside. Even the very fact you've woken up and they look at the time and they find that, oh, they didn't actually switch on their alarms. Their phone went off. That is enough for you to edit it into a drama. So you don't have to concoct one.
Amazing, amazing. That is well explained. You just find the drama, quote unquote, as you progress in the shooting and also in the editing. You never know. I mean, you don't go looking for the drama finds you.
Yeah, it is there. You just have to observe.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
another one is, in some cases, certain information is authentic, but that maintains the community or the character. How do you navigate this? And are there situations when you leave out some things on your storytelling?
So, when it comes to sensitive topics, there's a film, the one I mentioned, I was part of, is called How to Build a Library. And it follows these two young girls as they try to rebuild some libraries in Nairobi. But then as the camera crew was filming, They ended up filming some conversations that would appear to be a bit sensitive when released to the public, because it featured some prominent politicians. And so one of the things you do not want to do is that you do not want to put the lives of your subjects in danger in your pursuit to tell a story. There's a certain film called The Act of Killing. It's a documentary film that, you know, this amazing producer went to, I believe it was Indonesia, and he met with the people who orchestrated the genocide during, you know, when they were trying to phase out communism, and approximately 1.1 million plus people were killed. And how the producer was able to tell this sensitive information is that he went to these people and told them that, you know, I want to tell a story about this, but the approach he used was that, what if they could tell the story themselves? Because if I come in, they will feel like this person is you know, accusing us. It's very accusatory. But when it comes to sensitive matters, one, don't put your characters or your subject at risk. That is the most important thing. Number two, if it's sensitive in the likes of it might damage character, it might change perspectives for the worst, ensure that you fully understand the repercussions of it. You know, as Kenyans, we have seen the BBC documentary that came out about what happened during the protests, you know, and the filmmakers had an awareness that when that documentary came out, some of them would be pursued even by the very government that is in power. And so safety and security is very important. Number two, understanding the repercussions of these stories when told is also very, very key. And also the other thing, it might not be life and death situation, but also understand that the subjects have a life even after you finished filming. So you don't also want to leave them in a space where their community members are looking at them and segregating them on the very fact that you are part of this thing that has tainted our community. And that's why I said understanding context is very important. You know, cultural context, historical context, social context is very, very important, so that you don't end up with a film, yet that film has left, you know, families broken, communities at risk. So it's very important to know these things even as you're planning on your production. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Abel. Well explained. So I'm just going to read through. Great session. I thank you, Abel. Great presentation. I love it. This was really so really so amazing and useful. Thanks, sir, for this. Really help. This was really helpful. I really enjoyed today's class. It was well delivered. Some of us joined it late. We will share the slides and we will also share the recording. And he says, thank you, Abel, for tonight. Have learned a lot. Yeah, I really like that storytelling is not random but guided by context, among others. Beautiful presentation. Thank you so much. Truly, we need to change our perspective about African stories. I don't know how to navigate storytellers in climate, gender, and peace topics. And he shared his LinkedIn account there, that is Kingdom. They set of this, I think Hannah was answering the question on policy around telling stories, and she was saying they set the agenda in storytelling process. And then yeah, that one we answered. And then we asked where can we watch your film? And lastly, quite an interesting perspective on storytelling. So before I say something else, where can we watch your film?
So my film is just finishing its festival rounds.
Okay.
So I think in the next 2 or 3 months, it will have finished its festival rounds. And then we're going to have screenings here in Nairobi. And so when that is done, I'll be sure to share links of the same. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this particular film is not just have it do festivals and that's it. I wanted to give it back to the organization so that they can use it as a tool for fundraising. And so once it's done, and I'm sure they're going to put it up on YouTube, I'll be sure to send the link.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Abel. Let me read one last one, then I will give Alechenu. I've seen someone's hand. Let me see. Alechenu's hands is up. Then I'll wrap it up. Before that, I have an announcement and whatever. So so let me read this. This class just came in at the right time when Africa is bleeding Congo and now Sudan. As African storytellers, we have a responsibility to create change and call for peace through authentic storytelling. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's really amazing, amazing. Alechenu, please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, good evening. So please, I want to ask question because like I'm from Nigeria, and you talk about like some parts of the country is very difficult to access, like or especially the northern part, which they were so embedded with some cultures. And what if you observe that from the story you want to tell, since we learn that we should allow them to tell the story themselves, and you observe that they are not truly bringing out the true story, how would one fine tune them to change their mind to like freely come up with something, not to pretend, or probably because of the culture and feel not safe around them?
All right. I think one of the things that I've realized is when you look at the community that you're going to film as people first and foremost, you realize that even you, assuming someone wants to come, someone who you do not know wants to, they send you an email and they say, oh, I saw that you have a very nice couch and I want to come film that couch. You do not know this person. You don't know where they're from. You do not know their motives. It's very hard for you to open up your space and invite them. And so as storytellers, as documentary filmmakers, the thing that will help you loads is if you could set aside time, not to shoot, but rather to just go spend time in that community. You'll be able to identify different people in that community. So you'll find that maybe the story you want to tell, you thought it was with person A, but person B is the one who is willing to tell it. And so number one, find a way to spend time with them before you bring the cameras. Yeah. Then slowly you come with a camera. You don't shoot. You just let it sit maybe in a corner somewhere. What that does is that it allows them to acclimatize. It allows them to sit comfortable even with that camera around, because now it becomes part of their lives. The problem that most filmmakers do is that you just send a brief. Oh, I'm coming to your community in 3 weeks. I want 5 stories and go, But when you want to tell especially impactful stories, what you really want to do is spend time, one, either in that community, two, with a leader or someone who's considered an authority in that community, because they're the ones who will tell you, I think family A has a better story to tell because they've worked with them. So that even when it is time for you to shoot in family A, you are able to leverage on the relationship between the community leader and that particular family. Because you see, at the end of the day, you're still an outsider. And then the other thing is that doing a lot of research, and then finally building allies in that community. There are instances where I remember there's a film called what's the name? called, it's not how to build a library. I'll send a poster. I'll give Sharon the poster to share. And one of the things that will get you the best stories is when you spend time. And if you can't spend time in that community, you can actually look for a young person or someone who you can train and give them a camera and tell them, just record. It might not be the footage that we will use, but just record your everyday life, because the people in that community, they know you. And so there's more than one way to get a story. But at the end of the day is ensuring that you keep at the back of your mind that knowing that these are people that you're dealing with, not just objects to give you a story that, that will be amazing. And so when you know that before you come to shoot, you understand the community, you respect them, you respect their practices, you find allies during the shoot, you can help them, maybe if it's buying them food stuff. Those are the things that allow you to also be part and parcel of the community. And even after you are done with the film, and it's showcasing all over the world and everything, you keep in touch with that community. Why? Because you see, they were vulnerable enough to open themselves up for you to come in and film them. And so always keeping at the back of your mind that there are some authentic stories you can't tell unless the subject of that community allow you into their world. And so just remembering they're human as well will help a long way. And just be patient. Sometimes stories take time. There are stories I've heard of, like the one we did called There's the Letter, took 8 years. How to Build a Library took 7 years. Some have taken as short as 5 days, like the ones we did with school. 5 days filming, some took years. So you have to be patient, because what matters most is the story, but even more important, the people. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it surely does. It surely does. I mean, you've done justice to this topic. I'm just telling myself, you could not have found anyone better to do this than you have done it. You've done a perfect job, Abel, and we've learned a lot. And I love the fact that you've mentioned about going to the community and actually living in the community, so that you're able to bring out the aspects, the story according to the way the community does it. And I think most of the time that is what we miss, especially as videographers and filmmakers. We only go to the field. We say, we need 2 stories. Please find us 2 people or 3 who can talk about something. And we don't get the story actually, because of the anxiety of the camera and all those things. And I think this is something we're going to put into practice, me included. Just learn and observe. And I think one thing about me, when I visit different cultures or different countries, I don't like to go to maybe hotels and whatnot. I love to go to the grassroots, to those women who sell in the market. Just sit there and like listen to what they're saying. Hop on a matatu, what is it called, a public vehicle, and just go and listen to the conversations they have, so that you're able to actually understand where these people coming from, and how do you frame the film, the documentary that you're about to do. Because one thing, I think you mentioned this when you're doing your presentation, you said you cannot come and with your Kenyan mentality to Rwanda and actually do that story like a Rwanda person. You need to first experience the Rwanda culture, know what is accepted, what is done in Rwanda, all those things. And I think we could not have found anyone better to actually do this. And you've done a good job, very good job. And I can see people are commending you. They're saying a good job. Kindly, I would like, someone says, I would like to go out with you in your next activity. Yes, let me finish the sentence. In your next activity, I would want to get the feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. We are entering. I have a few friends of mine who we are doing a lot of filming, especially in 2026. Hopefully, I'll be able to share some of those opportunities even on socials.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's see. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Even if you have a production and you need an extra set of eyes, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to just share my 2 cents.
Okay. I was looking for your contacts. I thought you had put it at the end, but I've seen it's not there. But you can find Abel on all social media as Abel Waweru, and you'll definitely find him. And he's a good person. He answers DMs. He's not going to stalk you. Yeah, this has been so good, Abel. Yani, and one thing, let me tell you something. Abel is one of the people who made me actually do this masterclass. So he was like, Shelly, you can do this. You know what? Just do it. And, and here we are, session 9 and session 10. Next week, we are done. It's been amazing. And he's been the force behind he's been pushing. He's been like, you're doing a good job, continue. And, Abel is just Abel. Thank you so much, Abel. I really, really, really celebrate you and appreciate you so much. And let's just show him some love. Let's react in the comments. Let's do some emojis. Let's appreciate him. And also to our participants, it's always amazing to have you here. I know I'm going to really miss you because now I'm used to having you every day, every Thursday. But I know we are actually having a physical event. Finally, the posters are out. Let me just share with you. Where are these posters now? Okay, let's see. Yes, so this one. I don't know if it's visible. I think I'll just scroll down. So this is the poster. It will be coming out in a few. So we are having the networking experience, and this is meant to strengthen the global communication ecosystem. So this is to officially launch a dynamic networking space that brings together communication professionals, thought leaders, and organizations to exchange ideas and collaborate. So this platform aims to foster impactful, inclusive, and sustainable communication practices that strengthen the global communication system. It is actually happening next month on 28th of November at 9 a.m. to until whatever time, until you feel like you want to leave at Baraza Media Lab. This is in Nairobi. We are going to be sharing this poster in our social. And in case you want to be a partner with us for this particular, let me just look for this. Where is this? Yes. So in case you want to be a partner with us, in case you want to partner with us to actually do this particular event, feel free to reach out to me. For more information, you can just email us on our email address, sjevent66@gmail.com. And yeah, we are going to have an amazing time. If you're able to come, please make sure you come. Don't be left behind. It's